house in Baltimore. A long Monday night and a chilly Monday night to 1 o'clock on Sunday as the Detroit Lions come in from Motown on long rest and a lot of hurt feelings around Thanksgiving and a loss to Case Keenum and the Minnesota Vikings. This guy is the morning sports anchor for WWJ and 97.1 The Ticket in Motown. He's been doing it for almost 2 decades out there. You can follow him and his lovely dog on Twitter at AJ Ortiz 3. That's the number 3. He is Tony Ortiz, one of our defending champions from out there, sitting, going all hobnobbing with nice Pistons and Red Wing seats now in a beautiful new facility. And the Lions are, well, the same old Lions, dare I say, Tony Ortiz, right?
No, you're absolutely right, and you're right about the hurt feelings over what happened on Thanksgiving Day, because there are definitely a lot of Lions fans who were unhappy to see the Lions lose that game to the Vikings. There were a lot of Lions players who, quite frankly, were unhappy to lose that game to the Vikings. They're now 3 behind Minnesota with 5 left to play, and you know what? The math doesn't look too good for the Lions winning the NFC North.
Well, we resemble that comment. We have the Steelers doing sort of the same exact thing. We're going to see them in a couple weeks. Maybe we beat them and it, ups our stock and, makes our muscles a little bigger. But really, it's about getting to the playoffs at this point so you get a chance to play in a real game and maybe go up there to that the glass menagerie in Minnesota and try to take them down at some point in January, as you did back in September. But, these are 2 sort of weird, ugly 6-5 football teams, and quite frankly, I like the Ravens more on Sunday because of the way it's trending and the way they're playing, but more than that, I like the Ravens' chances of playing in January because the AFC is a whole different animal than the NFC right now. That NFC thing's a real catfight over there.
Yeah, I call it the meat grinder in the NFC because there's so many good teams in the NFC battling each other. I mean, just look at the NFC South where you've got Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans are all very good teams. They're all fighting for either the division title or the wild card, and the Lions, unfortunately, are trapped in that. And think about this, Nestor. The Lions have already lost to Carolina, to Atlanta, and to New Orleans, which means in the wild card race, the Lions are not only a game behind those teams, but when you add the tiebreaker in, they're 2 games behind. They have a better conference record at this point than Seattle, but nobody in their right mind at this point thinks Seattle is going to fall apart and break down. That's something the Lions usually do, and at this point, that loss on Thanksgiving to Minnesota really looms large for the Lions, as well as those losses we just talked about with the NFC South teams.
Sucks when you can't run the ball, brother. I mean, we know around here, and, it's not just a trend in Detroit. It's just sort of a way of life, right?
Absolutely, and here's the thing. The last 100-yard rusher in a game for the Lions was Reggie Bush, and that was nearly 5 or 6 years ago. That's how long it's been since the Lions have had. And look, no one's asking them, Nestor, to run for 100 yards every game, but they've got to be able to be efficient moving the ball on the ground, make teams respect the run, and that's been the Lions' biggest problem offensively. Teams like a Minnesota, like New Orleans, like Carolina, don't respect the Lions' running game. They can gang up on the pass. They gang up on Matthew Stafford. They jam the wide receivers at the line of scrimmage, don't let them get a lot of free roam. And when that happens, the Lions' offense becomes inconsistent. Sometimes it looks good. Sometimes it bogs down in the neutral. And that's been a problem for this team the entire year.
It's hideous to watch, isn't it? I mean, beyond the frustration of not scoring, it's sort of not fun, right?
No, it's not fun at all. It's an offense that you think is high-powered with the guy who right now is the highest-paid player in the NFL, in Matthew Stafford, and this offense just does not look like it's hitting on all cylinders. And the problem is, Nestor, the worse the offense looks, the more inconsistent the offense looks, the worse their playoff chances get. And think about this. This was a year that it seemed like everything was all set up for the Lions. Aaron Rodgers goes down with his injury. Minnesota goes through a quarterback carousel. No Teddy Bridgewater at the beginning. Sam Bradford goes down. They lose their best running back in Dalvin Cook. It looked like the road was wide open for the Lions, and yet here we stand with 5 weeks left to go in the season, and the Lions just don't look like a playoff team at this point.
Yeah, I don't know that anything I saw on Thanksgiving sort of led me to the thoughts of signs of life for their efforts. And, especially watching some of these other teams, Carolina, Atlanta playing better, to your point, Seattle, these teams that you're going to be competing with, the Lions don't look like they're in that category right now. And I think part of that, the injuries and losing Haloti Ngata, I mean, stopping the run's been a real problem. And, the Ravens want to run. And if the Ravens do run on Sunday, they're going to win big. I mean, that's something they have not been able to do at all.
And I agree with you 100% because teams have been able to move the ball on the ground well against the Lions. Even the New York Giants, as bad a team as they were still able to run the ball well on the Lions. And you're right, Haloti Ngata going out was a huge loss for this team. When Ngata was in there, the Lions were able to control opposing running games. Since he's been gone, they have just done a terrible job with running games. A'Shawn Robinson has looked well in his second year, but he needs some help. Akeem Spence has not been the answer. They miss Haloti Ngata.
Well, and you know, those guys are hard to replace, as was Ndamukong Suh. You know, through the course of time, and you've been there for all of this stuff, you know, that wasn't such a bad trade-off in retrospect. I mean, we're always trying to figure out, well, you know, Ricky Wagner went to you guys, and we wound up with Austin Howard, and, you know, even though he's playing, you know, hurt and banged up right now, he's been a nice addition to the team, and it's not perfect, but certainly saves some money. You know, when guys move on, you need to replace them. You know, the Ngata for Suh thing for, a legendary kind of guy there and a guy that got legendary money down in Miami. Hey, the Dolphins want to renegotiate already, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Nestor, here's the thing, though, and Lions fans will remind you of this constantly. It should not have been Suh for Haloti Ngata. It should have been Suh for Aaron Donald. When the Lions had a chance to grab Aaron Donald in the draft a few years ago, they decided to go with Eric Ebron, the tight end, and he's been, at best, average. And that's a problem because when you draft a guy at number 10 ahead of a guy like Aaron Donald, who is a perennial Pro Bowler, average just doesn't cut it, and that's something Lions fans will remind you constantly, that when Ndamukong Suh left, it should have been Aaron Donald stepping in there, not Haloti Ngata.
You want us to send you Brashad Perryman? I mean, I'm just saying, like, of all the draft picks for Ozzie in all these years, this kid has had B, U, S, and now we are literally crossing the cross on the T. They dressed him on Monday and couldn't get him the ball. It's really an incredible thing when your draft picks don't make it to post. That's how coaches get fired. That's how quarterbacks get shown the door, and bad things happen when your guys don't get on the field.
Absolutely, and that gets head coaches fired as well. And look, I don't think even if they miss the playoffs that Jim Caldwell gets fired, but I guarantee you that the seat under Caldwell gets a lot hotter if the Lions don't make it to the playoffs this year, even though he did sign an extension during the season. It's just something that with a new GM and Bob Quinn in place now in his second year, if you're a coach like Jim Caldwell, you don't take that chance. You get to the playoffs, you become a competitive team, and you don't take the opportunity or take the chance on possibly stumbling along and possibly getting fired in a year or two down the road. Although Caldwell is pretty, and you've covered him before, Nestor, when he was the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, he's a pretty level-headed guy. He understands the way the coaching profession works, but again, with this team being as inconsistent as it is, it reflects on the coach.
Well, he is such a decent guy, right? I mean, I don't think you could spend any time around Jim Caldwell without finding him to be bright, entertaining, professorial, fatherly, unclely, big brotherly. He sort of can play all of those roles, but, at heart, he is a quiet guy. You know what I mean? He's not going to be the rah-rah, out-in-front guy, and, that's one thing about the Lions organization right now. It is sort of heads down, sort of professionalism, right? Top to bottom, Stafford's a grown-up. A lot of grown-ups around there, I'd say, right?
Yes, and that's a big change from maybe 7-8 years ago when this Lions organization had a bunch of guys who, let's be honest, were immature and needed to grow up. This is a much different organization. The one thing I will say about Jim Caldwell, the players in that locker room, Nestor, they love him. They would run through a brick wall for him if he told them to do it. And to a man that I've talked to in that locker room, the one thing they like about Caldwell is that he is a man, that he is level-headed, that he is professional. He tells them the truth. He doesn't sugarcoat it. They make a mistake. It doesn't matter if it's Stafford or if it's the 53rd man on the roster. He points it out. There are no favorites. He doesn't play favorites. He tells everybody exactly what they need to hear and what they need to know, and the players respect that a great deal. They've been in places before, and players will tell you they've played for other coaches, other organizations, where it's basically been a case of, just tell you exactly what you need to hear to get the job done. The players understand that when Caldwell asks about your family, when Caldwell asks about how you're feeling, he actually means it. It's not something just to prop his job up.
He is Tony Ortiz. He is the morning sports anchor at WWJ, as well as 97.1 The Ticket out in Detroit, and all things Motown sports there. You can follow his journey and his beautiful dog. What's your dog's name, by the way?
My dog's name is Austin.
Austin. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, anybody puts their pet up. My cat, my new kitten is Nala, and we lost our kitty.
Nice.
We lost our kitty when we were over in Wimbledon. Not only lost the game, I lost my cat when we were over in London. So we have replaced her. She's not a part of my Twitter picture, but is a part of my life. So you can go see her beautiful green eyes as well as Tony's beautiful dog. Is that a lab? Is that what that is?
It's a chocolate lab, yes.
Yeah, beautiful. A.J. Ortiz, 3 way to find Tony Ortiz out in Detroit. And so who's the best player beyond Stafford on that team? I've asked everyone I've talked to in Detroit. It's sort of a stock question for me, but it sort of highlights who we should be watching. And certainly that secondary is something to watch, right?
Yeah, and that would be where I'd say the next best player after Matthew Stafford is, and that's Darius Slay. He has turned into a shutdown corner for the Lions, and I think that is a guy who has really helped improve that secondary. Grover Quinn would be number 3 on that list, and those two guys have really solidified the Lions secondary. They've helped players like Quandre Diggs and Nevin Lawson develop into some decent players. Again, they're not Pro Bowlers, but they are very, very good. The Pro Bowlers, though, are Slay and Quinn. If there's any justice in the world, those two guys will definitely earn a trip to the Pro Bowl this year.
I know you were self-scouting, as they say, when the Ravens played on Monday night in that steamer against the Texans. Some thoughts about the Ravens? I mean, I find it fascinating that here in 2017, after he was drafted in 2003, that I'm still talking about Terrell Suggs literally being the best player on the field Monday night.
And that's the one thing that jumped out immediately at me Monday night, Nestor, is the fact that the Baltimore Ravens defense is still a good defense. And the Lions have struggled against good defenses, but you got players like Terrell Suggs, and you see a player like that, and immediately your eye gets drawn to him, and that's going to be a problem for the Lions, because what I saw Monday night was an active Ravens defense that takes pride in stopping the run, and we talked about how inconsistent the Lions' running game is, and I just think that the Lions have some problems ahead of them in facing the Ravens on Sunday, because I just don't see how they're going to be able to move the ball on the ground against Baltimore.
Hey, man, always a pleasure to check in with you. We will stay in touch. And, hey, the Tigers and the Orioles don't get together so much, and this Lions-Ravens thing only happens every 4 years. But you got that beautiful new facility there watching the Red Wings and the Pistons. My partner, Brian Billick's son-in-law, is on your Pistons team, John Lure. So yep. I get a lot of Detroit basketball tweets from Coach Billick coming in on my threads as well. But I've seen the new arena there. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I mean, I'll come in for a concert or something somewhere down the line, or maybe a Red Wings game, but I got to admit, I will miss the Joe. Although, I did meet Eddie Van Halen at the Palace at Auburn Hills, so I've always held that as a soft spot, but I was not a fan of the Bad Boys back in the day. But I know it is sort of a new dawning and a new awakening for downtown Detroit in sports, right?
Yeah, it really is. There's a lot more development around downtown Detroit. Nestor, when you come to town, get to the stadium about a half hour early and walk around. There's a lot of great history of Detroit, from the old Olympia sign, which was the original stadium for the Red Wings and the Pistons, to stuff about the Pistons and the Red Wings. Just walk around for a while. Guys like Kid Rock, there's all sorts of things. Just walk around for the extra half hour and just take in the history of Detroit. By the time you get done walking, you'll get a pretty good idea about this city.
Is there any stale beer left over from the Lindell AC? If there is, I want to drink from its cup.
I think there's some stale beer. I think we can find you some former stale beer from the Lindell AC around here, Nestor.
I want to find something that Boog Powell left when he was celebrating in 1969 or something like that,
Knowing this city, there's probably some stale beer left around that Boog Powell had in '69.
I want something with an ode to Boog is what I want. Hey, brother, always a pleasure, man. We'll send everybody out to your Twitter to follow you and your beautiful dog. Thanks for coming on, Tone.
Nestor, always a pleasure to talk to you. You take care, man.
You got it. Tony Ortiz out there in the Motor City getting it done in Motown. He is A.J. Ortiz and the number 3 out on Twitter. He is the morning sports anchor at WWJ and 97.1 The Ticket. You can find me out in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. I want to remind you about our incredible partnership with Coppin State University. We are your home for Eagles basketball all winter long. That's the Lady Eagles as well as the men's side. We had a great conversation with Juan Dixon as well as Dwayne Burrows, as well as track coach Carl Dixon, who joined us this week. CoppinStateSports.com. You can check that out. And, of course, our conversations in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault. Shout out to Al's Seafood out in Essex. Been getting crabs and crab cakes there since the 1970s. The oldest crab house in Baltimore. Still at Stemmers Run and Eastern at the foot of 702. Go see my man Chad, the crab man there. give a little love for Big Al, who's a bone marrow transplant survivor as well. Last but never least, there is a breaking news text service we have here. It is sponsored by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and anything breaking with the Orioles, with the Ravens, you're going to get it first on the WNST text service. It is our best service. It is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Make sure you're tuning in to Dennis on Thursday from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST as we get you ready for Lions and Ravens. Nasty at WNST.net is the complaint line around here. We've been talking crowds and fans not going to the games. Any feedback, nasty at WNST.net. Also, I'm tweeting and opining and social mediaing, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and of course, always streaming live right here on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.